This video is brought to you by Miniature Market. Thousands of board games, discounted prices, miniaturemarket.com.
Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here, and today we're going to be off looking at the beautiful blue water and all the different lagoons, because we're going to be going off and exploring those different lagoons and settling in there and getting some great resources while we're there. Today, we're going to be taking a look at Blue Lagoon. This is the latest design by Reiner Knizia, and this is being published by Blue Orange Games. It's for 2 to 4 players. It is sort of an area control with set collection aspect, and it takes about 30 to 45 minutes to play. So let me show you how it's played. I'll see you on the other side. Here's the board set up for Blue Lagoon. Now, the board stays the same regardless of the amount of people. However, in this bag are all these different resources, and they'll be randomly pulled out and placed in specific spots, but since they're placed randomly, each game will feel a little bit different. Each player will get 5 villages in their own color, and then they'll get a certain amount of settlers. Depending on the amount of players, you'll actually have between 20 or 30 of these. I've just showed you the ones that have some different artwork. So I like that they did some detail here of, even though all these sort of work similar, they have different artwork. These ones will go in the water, and even though these ones all go on the land, there's nothing different about them, but they did take the time to make the art different, and they used both males and females in here, so that's cool. Now here's an interesting look of how those villages look when you're staring at the board, how they sort of stick up and they look good in a 3-dimensional way. The game is played over 2 phases, essentially 2 different halves, where each half is actually scored exactly the same, and how you play the game is almost the same. There are some subtle but important differences I'll go over later, but essentially you're going to be doing some different things till the half of the game's over. You'll be scoring, and then you'll be doing again for the second half, scoring in the same way again, and whoever has the most points at the end wins. I'll go over some of the scoring a little bit later. Turns are very simple and move really fast in this game. On your turn, you can either place a settler, and when you do that, if you place it on a spot with water, in the first half of this game you can place it anywhere that's unoccupied, meaning there's not somebody else there, and these are double-sided, so it has land on one side, water on the other, so I can take my water settler and place it just like that. Now on a future turn, I can again either place one of these boats in any unoccupied water region, or I can place a land settler anywhere adjacent to any of the different pieces that I already have on the board. So for example, I could go here, and if you go, it's because it's adjacent, and here's a land piece on a land, and if you go onto a resource, you simply pick it up. I'll show you how you score these, as these are going to be set collection aspects of the game. Now when it comes back to me, another thing you could possibly do is place a village. And this is going to be very important for the second half of the game, which I'll go over later. Essentially, these are going to allow you to start from these different regions on the second half of the game from where those villages are. But on subsequent turns, maybe I go here, and I get this resource, and then maybe I go here. Again, you're only doing 1, but every time it comes back to my turn, you'll be doing something similar like this. Now this will continue in a clockwise manner until either all the resources have gotten off the board, or every player has run out of settlers. In this case, you'd stop and you'd go to scoring, and here's how you end up scoring this. First of all, everyone will get points for different things. Now there's actually 8 islands on the board. If you have a settler or a village touching at least 8 of these different islands, all of them, you'll get 20 points. If you have 7 different islands, you'll get 10 points. So if you basically have any of your pieces on 7 or 8 of the islands, you're going to get a lot of points there. The second way you can score is having a chained link. For each single link that you have in your longest chain, you'll get 5 points. So you're trying to chain together many islands in one big chain. If you do so, you'll be getting a certain amount of points. 5 for each one that you've chained in your largest chain. Next, you'll be getting majorities. Now, this says between 6 and 10 points, because as you can see next to each of the islands, depending how big it is, it'll have a certain amount of points. Whoever has the most pieces on that island will get that amount of points. If you're tied, you split them. Then you'll score resources. If you have 4 of the same type, you'd get 20 points. If you have 3 of the same type, you'd get 10 points. If you have 2 of the same type, you'd get 5 points. If you have 1 of each of the 4 main resources, where it's bamboo, coconut, water, and precious stones. In this case, I have 1 of each. I could get 10 points. And the brown ones are statues. Each statue you get are 4 points. And you can never use 1 for both sets. So I couldn't use this as part of that set. So you'll get your points for that. Then to go to that next phase, or the second half of the game, which is called the Sediment Phase, essentially what you do is you remove all of the settlers that are on the board from everybody. You'd leave your villages there. Unless for some point somebody puts a village on a spot that needs a resource, that would get pulled. But most of the time the villagers are going to stay. You'll basically put those resources back in the bag. You'll reset up the board, so the resources are going to be in different spots. Again, they're in the same spots on the board, but different resources might be there now because it's randomized. So at the beginning of the second phase, only people's villages are out there, which means wherever you left them in the first phase is very important, because now, even if you want to place a boat, you can only go adjacent to one of your other pieces. So where you've placed your villages is really going to tell where else you can go, because you can't just jump around and go in the water anywhere that's unoccupied. You can only go adjacent, so it's going to be smaller, a little bit more condensed. And so placing those villages in the first half is very important for that second half. And this second half plays out the same way, other than that big, important, but yet simple rule difference. And everyone continues to play until the same thing that ended the first phase, which is either all of the resources are gone or everyone has placed all their settlers, and then the game would end and you'd score it the same way. And so as you can see, scoring is the same thing. You just do it in the second half. You add up all the points from the first half and the second half. Whoever has the most is the winner. Now here's a shot of our most recent game of what the board might look like in a 4-player game as you're getting at the end there of that second phase. It gives you an idea of where people went, how they moved along, people that got blocked off, and things like that. All right, well, there's Blue Lagoon. What did I like about it? Well, first of all, it has a very simple rule set, but has great depth. I mean, you're literally just placing an explorer or a settler or a village, and that's it. That's all you're doing, and you're pretty much doing it on open water for the first half of the game, and or an adjacent spot. That's it. But where you go and what's going on, and reacting to other players and seeing what they're going for, trying to cut them off, trying to make sure you get what you're trying to work on. There's a lot of depth there for how simple this is. I often talk about this thing that I've sort of coined the phrase called the depth to complexity ratio, meaning how deep can a game be with how simple can a rule set be. This game is pretty much off the charts in a good way in this, because it's literally, when it's your turn, you're placing a little token, that's it. But there's lots of different ways you can go. And speaking of different ways you can go, lots of different ways to score in this game. So there's different things that you can go for. So you could either be on many different islands, whether you can be on all 8 or 7 of the islands, you're going to get a lot of points, so you may or may not want to go for that. And you're going to try to figure out which things you want to focus on throughout the game, because you can't do everything well, so you're going to try to figure out which things you're going for. So getting on all the islands there is one thing you can try to do. Linking the different islands, as many as you can together, and getting, I think it's about 5 points each for everyone you link in one big chain, you could go for that. Or you could go for the majorities, which is trying to have the most of each of the islands, and depending on how big the island is, it'll be worth more or less points than some of the other islands. Now, I liked that this is a very cutthroat game. Area control, area majority games tend to be cutthroat, but this one is in that vein where you're going to be cutting people off, you're going to be taking the things they want, you're going to be trying to block them out so they can't get past. Some people might not like this, and this might be a negative for you, but if you don't mind this sort of mean, nasty, in-your-face, aggressive, cutthroat style play, then this is definitely going to be one you're going to want to try out. Now, it's really extra cutthroat because in a lot of area majority games, you'll get points for being the first, and there'll be points sometimes for second and sometimes for third place. No, not in this one. You're either getting first place or nothing, and if you're tied, you get to split the points. So the majorities are very aggressively scored. I like that you can go over the different resource sets, whether you're trying to get a lot of points for having 4 of the same one, or get decent points for having 2 of the same one, or having 1 of each of the 4, or you can just go, you know what, I'm not going to do sets. I'll just run around and grab those different statues, because those are worth 4 points apiece. So I like that you can go after those different sets. Now the second round feels even tighter than the first, and it's interesting because this game where you do almost the same thing, but you don't have as much flexibility in your movement in the second half. The scoring's the same, and what you're trying to do is the same, but it's a little bit tighter because you're trying to figure out, you can only go adjacent. You can no longer just jump to different spots, and you're going to wherever you left your villages in the first round. So the first round has a big play on the second round. And that's what really creates a great arc to this game, where you're playing this, you're going after your certain things that you're trying to go for, you're trying to accomplish certain things, but at the same time you're also thinking, okay, the second half of the game, I'm only going to be able to go adjacent to where my villages are. Where am I going to put these? So lots of great deep strategy here. in a very light game, to learn it. So overall, I thoroughly enjoyed this game a ton. Now, anything negative I could say about it? The tokens themselves, and I don't know if this is on every version or maybe it's just because I got maybe a very early version of the game, but when you punch out the components, it had a ton of shavings, like little cardboard, little strips of shavings everywhere. And even after punching them all out and try to wipe them down, when you play them on the table, they still kept coming out. So I don't know, it's just a nitpick for me there that those little shavings just sort of ended up everywhere. I haven't ever seen that really that bad before. But I'm able to look past it because the game's fantastic. The score pad was great, but it could have used this sort of its own space for the final score, because you have the top half, you have the bottom half, and there was no like spot for final score, so we just kind of split it in half and did it. No big deal, but it would have been nice if they would have had a grand total spot there. And overall, the game's fantastic. We were talking afterwards, the last time we played this, saying, can you think of another game that does area control and set collection together in such a streamlined way, in such a quick way, where you're playing 30 to 45 minutes, but when you're done, you really feel like you've played a full Euro game. We couldn't really come up with one. I'm sure you guys maybe will in the comments and you'll hit me up with those, but this is one of the better sort of Mean Family style area control set collection games I've played in a while. Reiner Knizia is still on his game, Recently, I've liked his older stuff most, and his newer stuff has been very hit or miss with me, and this one's definitely a hit. I think the game shines best with 3 or 4 players. Now, it works with 2. It scales with how many pieces you'll get with 2 players. If you like a more open game that's going to be actually probably even more cutthroat than the 3 and 4 player, because you're only cutting each other off, and it's back and forth like that, but it is more open because you have more pieces and you can kind of go more places and accomplish more things. The 2-player game, I typically, with area control and stuff like that, like it with more, and I think this game definitely shines with 3 or 4. 4, it's super tight, super mean. 3's maybe obviously in between that. Shines with 3 or 4, scales okay with 2, but I still prefer it with 3 or 4. And this game I liked enough, it's going to be staying in my gaming library. So we're giving it a saxophone serenade, inducting it into my gaming library. This has been the Game Boy Geek, helping you find and enjoy the next board game we love. Hit it.
This video was sponsored by Miniature Market's Review Corner. The Review Corner features podcasts, video, and written game reviews by gamers for gamers. Miniature Market, the online gaming superstore. Thousands of board games, discounted prices. Check them out at miniaturemarket.com.